The first season of The Institute wraps up with a really satisfying, bittersweet conclusion for Luke's story, while setting up what's to come. And here's the thing, the show has already been renewed for season 2, which makes you wonder how that final arc is going to play into what we see next. So in that intense closing arc, the main kids at the facility are forced to conduct an assassination of a person driving a car. Meanwhile, Luke is racing against time in the outside world, desperately trying to save his friends before it's too late. As this Stephen King adaptation reaches its climax, all the children band together to take down the forces controlling the Institute. But here's the heartbreaking part. Many innocent characters from the Institute don't make it out alive in the process. The ending is definitely well-rounded and satisfying in many ways, but it purposefully leaves some story threads hanging to set up that second season. How the show differs from Stephen King's book. Now, in Stephen King's The Institute book, Mr. Smith, who serves as the leading figure behind the facility, actually reveals himself to Luke and the surviving children. He tries to reason with them by explaining that they only ran the facility to avoid future calamities and ensure humanity's survival. But Luke argues with him that even though children with precognition abilities can foresee the future, too many variables come into play in the long run. He suggests that the facility didn't have a strong enough reason to alter events of the present and torture children with supernatural powers in the name of serving a perceived greater good. The TV adaptation touches on these ideas, especially when Sigsby reveals the facility's true purpose. But the show doesn't dive as deep into those heavy themes about the consequences of changing the present to improve the future. Instead, the series relies more on spectacle in its final moments while saving those deeper philosophical explorations for season 2. The man on the phone, who comes off as the show's version of Mr. Smith, remains a mysterious figure toward the end and never reveals himself to the children. Why the man on the phone isn't worried. Here's where it gets really interesting. In those closing moments, Avery uses his psychic abilities to connect with all the other children from his facility, and apparently with kids from other similar facilities too. This shows us that there are multiple institutes around the world. The man on the phone isn't really bothered by this particular institute going down because there are several others out there. He seems to mourn the facility's closure for just a moment before walking away to play with 2 unknown children. And here's another key detail. The show has already established that kids with precognition abilities are way more valuable than those with telepathy and telekinesis. Those kids the man on the phone is with might have precognition powers, since there weren't really any precog kids in this facility. As Hendricks confirmed earlier, precogs are treated like royalty because they're so rare, so it looks like the man on the phone might be keeping them for himself to get direct access to future knowledge. Plus, he knows the telepathic and telekinetic kids can always be replaced, which is why he's not upset about losing this facility. Does Sigsby change? Sigsby's story gets a really ambiguous ending. She takes an elevator and appears to drive off somewhere outside the main town, carrying that drive with all the evidence of the Institute's unethical and immoral activities. But the episode suggests she might not be as morally twisted as the man on the phone. Based on her actions throughout season 1, she seems to have been brainwashed into believing she's saving humanity, yet she's still clearly struggling with guilt and doubt. This sets up 2 possible paths for her in season 2. She could redeem herself by helping Luke and Tim use that evidence to expose the bigger conspiracy, or she could go down the dark path and stick to her recruiter's plan completely. What's next for Luke and his friends? Luke survives, along with a few of his friends, including Kalisha, though most of the Institute kids ultimately die. When Luke asks Tim what they should do next, Tim says he has a plan, but Luke reads his mind and responds that he doesn't, which catches Tim completely off guard. It's going to be really tough for Luke, Tim, and the gang to uncover this main conspiracy because it clearly extends way beyond just this town. But if Luke can develop his precognition abilities further, he might be able to prevent a lot of tragedies before it's too late. Knowing that Luke and Tim are coming after him, the man on the phone will probably try to stop them using more people or others with superpowers. So the stakes for Luke, his friends, and Tim are going to be way higher in the next season. Avery's sacrifice explained. While Hendrix and Sigsby manage to escape, characters like Tony and Stackhouse get their comeuppance when they die, as the kids use their abilities to destroy the entire institute. Unfortunately, all the other children, except for Luke, Kalisha, Nick, and George, end up staying with Avery at the facility before it collapses. The show doesn't actually confirm Avery's fate, so there's a slim chance he survived. But considering he also died in Stephen King's original novel, it seems pretty unlikely the character makes it out alive. Setting up Season 2. The precognition storyline in Season 1 really just scratches the surface, leaving Season 2 to dive into everything from its philosophical implications to the wider conspiracy behind it all. But since Season 1 used up all the source material, Season 2 is going to have to tell a completely original story. Given that the show's already been renewed, the creators probably have a solid plan for where things go next. Writer Benjamin Cavell and director Jack Bender have even talked about having Season 2 in mind from the beginning. The upcoming season already looks fascinating because Season 1's ending leaves so many unanswered questions for a whole new chapter to explore. Hopefully, it'll expand on Stephen King's original story and maybe even connect to some of his other works. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe for more.